He's a TA and he's gonna talk. Let's join Matt for today's TA Talk.
What is a travel agent? How do you use them? What are the benefits? Where do I find my luggage tags? Hello, happy travelers, and welcome into the brand new and drastically improved home office, which will serve as the setting of a brand new video series where we will answer all of those questions and more. TA Travel Agent Talk. We're going to be doing this as a episodic installment series where I'll go over frequently asked questions that I receive in my day-to-day job working as a travel agent or as a travel advisor, and I'll also be providing some tips, helpful information, little insights that I pick up along the way that I think could be helpful to the masses. So today we are going to start this brand new series with installment number 1, and today's topic is going to cover how we became travel agents, what our story is, kind of set the background, give you the whole story, the whole history, so you kind of know more about us if you're new to the channel or you're new around these parts, kind of give you the insight to how we got started here and what our journey has been. So maybe if you're interested in starting on a journey similar to that yourself, it can help give you some idea of what that's like. And at the risk of sounding a bit braggadocious, I think it's important to note that it's not just how we became travel agents, but how we became successful travel agents. It's one thing to start a business or a venture, and it's a completely different thing to find your way, find your path on that, and reach your ultimate goal, reach levels of success that can sustain you or bring you happiness, bring you peace in life, because that's what it's all about after all. And there are a lot of differences in those two journeys. So I'm going to give you some insight on that and just kind of fill you in on the background of how we got to the level that we are. So with that said, let's go ahead and begin with episode number 1 of TA Talk, our story, how we became travel agents. How did we get started? So when I say we, if you've been watching our channel, you probably know Chelsea, my wife, partner in crime, are on our channel, as well as Sonia, my mom, is also part of our travel agent team. So Mom and I are the ones who kind of spearhead the travel agency side of things, and then Chelsea and I do the videos. Chelsea does all the editing and things like that. So how did we get here? How did we start? Well, Chelsea and I, we met in high school. We've been dating since high school. We got engaged and then we got married, and we had different career paths to start out. We're both college graduates. Chelsea had her degree in education, elementary education to be specific, and my degree is in hospitality management, so things like hotels and restaurants and all of that good stuff. And that's where we got started. Chelsea went into schools teaching elementary, kindergarten, and first grade. And then I was working at Walt Disney World, working in resort hotels. I did mostly Bell Services, all different aspects of that. Some convention groups, because I worked at Coronado Springs, which is Disney's largest convention resort. And then also a little bit of front desk stuff as well. And what we found is that even though we were both in different careers, we both were finding ourselves more and more unhappy with those careers for various reasons. And so we decided that we wanted to change things up, and not just change things with the job and the working aspect, the professional environment, but also personally. We were missing each other. When we would leave during the day to go to work, we did not like that. We did not like being apart. We wanted to be together more. So the idea was born that maybe we could find something where we could work together, work from home would be great, and work in a different field that we really loved and enjoyed. Thus, an epic quest began of unimaginable levels of research and just diving into things, looking up ideas, bouncing off topics, brainstorming, yada, 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 that whole shebang. And somehow, some way, eventually found cruise planners, because I was searching for, again, things you could do from home, and they're often highly rated, maybe like the top as to businesses or franchises that you can own and operate from your home or mobile, wherever you choose to be. It doesn't have to be a specified brick and mortar location. So my first thought was, well, that sounds great, but who even uses a travel agent anymore? Like, is that even a thing? Why would you pay to use a travel agent when you can just book online yourself for free? How foolish and naive I was at that point. Thus, the research continued. It can't be that this is that popular and that well reviewed if there's not an element of success to it, if there's not some sustainable path to be had. But we continued to set forward after doing the research. It did sound like something we would be interested in, something we could potentially be good at, something we would like to do. And we saw all those testimonials and all the data that suggested that this actually was a sustainable business model and that people do use travel agents, because what we found out, as some of you have found out, and some of you might be learning for the first time here, you don't necessarily have to pay a travel agent. I used to say you don't pay them at all, but some travel agents do charge fees and costs. We chose not to do that ourselves. We never charge fees, costs, anything like that whatsoever. So it is completely free to use our services. And that's when it kind of clicked for us. We realized, oh, well, if people aren't having to pay for it, then they might actually be willing to use it. And luckily, that has been the case. So once we were convinced of that and we thought there was a chance that we could have a smidgen of success with this, we decided to go forward with it. So we quit our jobs, we walked away from those, and we decided to dive headfirst into this, give it our full effort, and we sold our car. We had 2 cars because we were working the different jobs, so we sold one of them just outright so we would have the money to purchase our Cruise Planners franchise, get all of our licensing. You have to become a registered seller of travel. There's a lot of stuff. Just like when you start any business, there are a lot of expenses up front. So we did that, sold our car, got the money, purchased our franchise, began. We were feeling great. And you know what happened? We did not have too much success at all. We got some friends and some family to book with us starting off. Even some of those we couldn't convince, though they still booked on their own. Thus, the life of a travel agent. You're always on this uphill climb of convincing people that they should book with you. And I totally understand it. I was a skeptic myself, as I mentioned, to begin with. So it was not easy sledding, and that was really magnified by the fact that we live in a very rural area where there's not a lot of disposable income. So people are not able to travel as much, and they're certainly not able to spend a lot of money on that travel. And people kind of get set in their ways when you live in a small town. We grew up in a small town. We now live in a small town. People don't tend to venture too far out of their small towns. There must be more to this provincial life, Bell said, and we believe that, but people who live in a small town don't necessarily feel that way. I say all that to let you know that our traditional marketing efforts were a colossal failure. We did the things that Cruise Planners recommended, or that any other travel agent recommends when you start out. There's magazines you can order that have all these flyers and information about the different cruise lines and the different itineraries, and you can distribute those out, and they have your contact information for your agency. You can do direct mail flyers, you can advertise on the radio, all these different things. And we tried several of those, and none of them worked at all. Like zero. We didn't get any business from that. So for a while there, we didn't have a business. We owned it, we operated it, but it was not generating any kind of sales or money. And thus, we were running out of money. We were putting ourselves in debt from starting up the business, having quit our jobs, and not having any income coming in. So we had to do what we had to do. We had to take on other jobs. We did some odds and ends, some kind of handiwork stuff. Chelsea was a babysitter for a while. I was tutoring online, worst job I've ever had. It was awful. And we did all of these collective things just to try to scrape enough funds to get by, and it was kind of a drag. And then things changed a bit because we decided to become online teachers. And that was kind of a weird way that came about. I say we decided. It kind of just fell into our lap. As I mentioned, Chelsea had already been a teacher in a brick and mortar school and somehow had come across this company that you teach English to children primarily in China via the internet. So she, I almost said audition. It basically was an audition process. You interview, but it really is an audition because you have to show yourself teaching. And she was hired, of course, because she's an amazing teacher. And so she did that for 6 months. And I was, as I mentioned, hating the online tutoring job I was doing. That was primarily for students in America, usually high school or college level. And I had had enough of it. And so I didn't think there was any way I could do what she did with teaching online children in China, English, who are very young, and you have to be very expressive, and you have to, and that's just not really me. But I was pressed. I needed something better, so I thought I would give it a go, and I did. And I was hired as well. We actually started doing pretty well and making decent money from it for us. We don't come from a lot of means, so that was good enough for us. And even though our travel agency was not successful at all, we were almost kind of forgetting about it because of the money that we were generating from teaching online. But then a culmination of things happened that kind of started to sway things away from that. Number one, we were not liking the teaching job as much as when we started because there were some changes and things were difficult. But the overall challenge with it is that, as I mentioned, most of the students were located in China, literally 12 hours away from where we live on the East Coast, or 13 during daylight savings time, or when it's not daylight savings time. I always get that mixed up. But whatever, it was either 12 or 13 hours away from us. And so what that meant is that most of the students would take these classes online after their typical school day ended. So we would have to get up at 5 a.m., 4 a.m., sometimes 3 a.m., and teach these classes until 8 or 9 a.m., going straight through. Then during the day, we would begin doing other tasks. And then sometimes at night, we would also have to teach as well. So we would get online at 8:30 p.m. and go until midnight or so. Sometimes, because the debt was piling up from starting the business, we would even have to go overnight. So start at like 8:30 p.m. all the way through 9 a.m., 10 a.m. the next morning. So very, very tough, very hard on your body, very difficult on your sleep cycle. And that paired with the fact that the teaching element was becoming less available because of restrictions by the Chinese government, and the fact that we had started another little venture called YouTube. And those were the tasks that I was referring to when I said we would teach in the morning and then do tasks during the day. YouTube was one of those things. Chelsea would be editing our YouTube videos, and then I would be doing travel agent work that was starting to pick up at that point. The reason it was starting to pick up at that point was because of those YouTube videos. Chelsea brilliantly decided to start a YouTube channel so that we could film our own travels, share them with our clients, was actually the initial intention. We thought, hey, if we go on this, we can show people what we did. It will give them an idea, because people are going to ask us if we think this is good, if we recommend it. What better way than just to show you? That was our thought. That was our intention behind it. And we thought, hey, maybe this YouTube thing will get big enough one day that maybe we can start to make a little money on the side from that. I infamously said that I believed no one would ever book with a travel agent that they saw online, because I already thought it was going to be difficult enough to convince people to book with us. That became true. And then thus, these people don't even know us. We're online. We might be in a different state. We might be in a different country. How is that going to happen? And I've never been so happy to be wrong as I was with that. Our YouTube started to steadily grow as we went on more cruises, more all-inclusive resorts, more journeys, more travels, more videos, and that drew in a larger audience. And slowly but surely, we started to accumulate a client base. Clients would come in, they would see us on Mariner of the Seas, and they wanted to book Mariner of the Seas, or they would see us go to Beaches Turks and Caicos, and they wanted to go to Beaches Turks and Caicos. So that started to happen, and it started to build up. And while that was a very good thing, because it meant our travel agency business was starting to grow, it was also very challenging while we were still teaching, because as I mentioned, you're up 3 a.m., teach until 8 a.m. Now you've got to go and edit YouTube videos, or you've got to handle travel agency business, and sometimes you have to start teaching at night. It was very difficult. And so anyone who's been watching our channel for a while may remember when I used to reference that we have to work 3 different jobs at a time. And that's what it was. It was doing all of that work to try to just get going, get off the ground floor, make enough money to just become profitable. Because as I mentioned, we've been doing this for about 7 years now, and we didn't become profitable until just like the last year. And now this year, we're actually starting to hit an element of profitability that is livable and sustainable. So it was definitely an uphill climb, a big slope, a mountain to conquer. But luckily, we did that, and we were able to step away from the teaching job, which actually worked out well, because then the Chinese government said no more American teaching, so we were cut out from that completely. But luckily, our travel agency business and our YouTube channel had started to reach such levels that it would begin to sustain us. And so that just continued to grow and grow. The channel grew, our client base grew, more and more people would reach out to us, and we'd have more bookings. And Of course, there was a little thing called a global pandemic that made a lot of that come crashing down right in the middle of that. No one was able to travel or wanted to travel for most of 2020. You could not cruise for half of 2021, and then there were limitations and restrictions for the second half. So that really just put a huge dent in our business. Our YouTube views plummeted, but luckily all of that passed and those numbers came back up to where they were, and then went well past that on both the travel agency side of things and the YouTube side of things. And all of that, again, kind of culminated when we had to end teaching. So it all luckily just lined up to where we could then just do our YouTube channel as well as our travel agency business. And since then, it has just continued to grow, and we are so thankful and appreciative of that. And that, in a nutshell, is our story of how we became travel agents, how we became successful travel agents, how we got to this point, what the journey was. And I like to kind of tell this story because I do think it gives a lot of insight to people who might want to embark on a similar journey. And we always encourage people to take that jump, make the leap, go for something. Why not? What do you have to lose? But I do think you need to be measured in your approach, and you need to be realistic, and you have to be prepared. And I think that really is true for any embarkation in life on a drastic change of your day-to-day. But I think it really, really applies when we're talking about something like this, becoming a travel agent, because so many people believe that it's all fun and games. You're working in an environment and in a field that is fun. Travel is most people's vacation. It's what they do when they're not at work. And sometimes that gets juxtaposed with what you're doing is just fun and not work. And it is fun, but it is still work. There are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of day-to-day things. I work more now by far than I ever have. I work harder now by far than I ever have. Is it worth it? Yes. But it is not just a cakewalk. And with that said, that concludes today's topic of our first installment of the TA Talk video series, how we became successful travel agents. But what I want to do for every installment of this series is to have a little Q&A in the form of a mailbag. My mailbag is delivered by Spider-Man Potato Head. He's swinging in with this week's questions. So we actually did a post on our YouTube channel and on our Instagram asking you to send your questions to me about travel agents, becoming a travel agent, using a travel agent, whatever you had in mind. And we will continue to do that every week. So a couple things I want to mention. One, if you've submitted a question and it's not answered in today's video, it may be answered in a future video. So hold on to that. Number two is you can feel free to also leave your questions for the next video in the comments of this video. That's fine too, but we will probably continue doing those posts to give you a medium of which to submit your inquiries. So with that said, Spider-Man Potato Head has delivered this week's questions. Let's go ahead and open them up here and see what we got. Here we go. Our first question is from Kelly O'Neill on YouTube. Where did you get your retro looking Happy Trails sign? I love retro stuff. Love your channel. Well, thank you so much. You're referring to this sign here. In the picture we posted on Instagram, it did look like it said Happy Trails because my big head was blocking it. It actually says Happy Travels. Of course, ours our catchphrase there, and we ordered that online on Etsy. Etsy, where you get all those handmade things. So that's where you can find that. Next question is from Mike Suffield on Instagram. Can I use a US travel agent if I'm from the UK, the United Crayon, the United Kingdom? And the question is, you may be able to use certain travel agents. Unfortunately, not us. We're only licensed to sell to US and Canadian residents legally. If it was up to us, we would work with you, but the lawmakers say otherwise. But it's a fantastic question. Next one is from Alice Mercer on YouTube. Oh, what are the resources you recommend for cruisers who have serious mobility issues? Well, there are a lot of those that you can check out. There are several channels dedicated to talking about those different things, several outlets. I don't have it memorized because it's not something I need to pull from very often. But if you have a booking that you need those noted for, shoot me an email, let me know, and we can definitely get that addressed for you. But do some research, check out. There's some people who have dedicated channels and social media to that. Lindsay underscore C23 on Instagram says, do you get discounts as a TA, so travel agent? For example, on your trip to Turks and Caicos, my life goal is to be a travel agent. Well, if it's your life goal, I hope you will make it happen. And to answer your question, yes, we can receive discounts. Typically, you have to do some kind of training or something like that. Depends on the vendor that's providing said discount. I would like to say it's not as much as people think. It's not usually free. There are examples of that, but those are rare, and it may not be as big of a discount as you're expecting, but you can get them. Most of the travel that we do, we pay full fare for, just like you would as a client or as a viewer. So there are some, but maybe not as many as you would think. All right, friends, that is going to do it for our debut episode of TA Talk. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it insightful, useful, funny, maybe, would also be nice. And can't wait to continue this. Again, this is a series I'm planning to continue on doing. Just lots of topics I want to talk about, lots of things I want to get into. You guys are going to continue sending those amazing questions that will help generate some conversation and help guide us on our way here through our different travels. So with that said, I'll leave you with what I always leave you with. If you are interested in booking a cruise or a trip to a Sandals Beaches all-inclusive resort, something along those lines, we would love to help make that happen. As I always tell you, and as I mentioned in this video, our services are completely free to you. We never charge any fees or costs whatsoever. Your price won't increase, and we would love to help you. So feel free to reach out via the travel agent information. You can find it in the description of this and every other video on our channel. See you for the next installment of TA Talk very soon. But until then, I'm signing off. See you next time. Happy travels!